We're here with the three candidates for Orange County Judge in Group 10. Thank you all for joining us. First thing we need to do as a housekeeping matter that we do with all the candidates in every race is to ask you a couple of background questions. The first question, and we'll start with Ms. Caraballo and move down the table, is have you ever been arrested before?
I have not.
Okay. Mr. McChesney?
I have not.
Mr. Barlow?
I have not.
Okay. And Mr. Barlow, and then we'll go the other direction. Have you ever declared bankruptcy?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not.
I have not.
Okay. Thanks for bearing with us on that. I'd like to ask you each in turn, and we'll start at the far end of the table from me, why you are running for county judge.
I'm running for a county court judge because the litigants utilizing our court system deserve a judge that's compassionate, knowledgeable, and committed to serving their needs, and I'm all of those things. My commitment to service is demonstrated through my time in the U.S. Army. I've been married for 27 years and I raised 2 children. I'm board certified in construction law, one of only 317 attorneys in Florida to obtain that distinction. And I am committed to serving all the citizens of Orange County.
Mr. McChesney?
Yes, well, I'm running for Orange County Judge to bring equality and justice to the Orange County court system. I am very experienced. I think my experience would be well lent to this particular courtroom. I have experience in 15 years as a criminal attorney, 6 years with the state attorney's office, and 9 years in my own criminal defense practice. I think this experience is very fair and balanced, would bring a nice balance to the courtroom as well. I also think that my background, my courtroom demeanor, and my experience just in the courtroom itself would lend itself very well to being a nice Orange County judge for the people of Orange County.
Okay. And Mr. Barlow, the question for you, of course, would be why are you running to keep your job?
Well, because I believe that, as my compatriots say, that the citizens of Orange County do certainly deserve a qualified, experienced, and patient judge that has not forgotten about the humanity of the people and can temper justice with that humanity. I have served for the last 5 years in that capacity with a judicial philosophy that no litigant should ever be penalized for exercising their constitutional rights. For example, all things being the same, someone should not be penalized and be given a greater sentence than they would have gotten had they entered a plea simply because they went to trial, because that's their right. They're entitled to that. Our Constitution tells us this. Additionally, I believe that my experience, particularly in the criminal trial law field, where I am board certified and have been since 2008, makes me uniquely qualified and uniquely experienced to be in county court, where approximately 75% of the caseload does involve criminal trial cases. We currently have 18 county judges. 16 of them handle criminal-related matters. According to the bar, as a Florida board certified criminal trial specialist, I have been recognized for both professionalism as well as my expertise in the field of criminal trial law, doing jury trials. And I have done many over my 25 years of criminal trial experience. But that's not all I have done. I've also done divorce work and family law work in the state of Alabama, where I was before I moved to Florida in 1990. I've done some civil contracts and probate work as well. So I believe that I have done a good job serving the citizens of Orange County for the past 5 years as a judge, and I'd like to keep doing that. I've also served for 9.5 years as an assistant state attorney here in Orlando, and was a defense attorney with a local firm for 8.5 years, or 8 years, and another 2.5 years on my own. I did have my own firm in another state. So I believe that I bring a unique combination of experience and patience, and I believe that I am a judge of proven ability that the citizens should retain and keep on the bench as their Orange County judge.
Now, we interview in a lot of judicial races, and generally we don't see candidates coming forward except for or for the most part, we see candidates coming forward when there is an open seat. In this case, we don't have an open seat, so I'm interested, starting at the far end of the table again, why you chose to challenge an incumbent in a judicial race.
Well, our judges in Orange County and throughout the state of Florida serve 6-year terms. So every 6 years, the voters of the county have the opportunity essentially to hold a job interview and select the most qualified person for that position. So there was no open seats when I entered the race, and so that's why I'm challenging an incumbent.
Is there anything about this particular incumbent that led you to get into this group?
Well, initially I was in a different race. I was in a race that the seat became a vacancy that the governor was to fill, and then I moved into the race against Judge Barlow. And it's more about me. It's not about Judge Barlow. It's about my qualifications and how I can represent the citizens of Orange County and the litigants that utilize our court system. And it's not about the incumbent. It's about my qualifications and my desire to serve the citizens of this county.
Mr. McChesney.
Yes, I was actually originally in a different race for an open seat against 2 other attorneys. At the time, it was an open seat, and I think all 3 of us were jumping in about the same time. I realized once the field of candidates had kind of settled in that I was in a race that didn't really need me. The other 2 candidates that are in that race have very similar backgrounds to myself. They've both been defense attorneys. They've both been prosecutors. I think they're both good, upstanding members of the bar that would do a good job in the role of judge. I decided in particular that this race needed me the most, and that's why I jumped races to enter this race. In particular, and I think both of my colleagues sitting beside me are very honorable people, and I certainly don't want to disparage them in any way. I could distinguish myself from Ms. Caraballo simply in the fact that I have a lot of criminal trial experience. I've tried over 70 jury trials to completion. I've argued hundreds of motions in front of the criminal trial courtrooms. I've done so as both a prosecutor and a defense attorney. And as Mr. Barlow mentioned earlier, most of the county court criminal justice system is actual criminal law. So I think it would be very difficult on day one to come into a courtroom without that requisite experience. I did see that Ms. Caraballo had entered that race against Mr. Barlow. And then, of course, I also researched Mr. Barlow. I do feel that Mr. Barlow, while his overall performance is not bad as a judge, I do think that I have a better temperament than Mr. Barlow on the bench. I think that just in general, I have a nice, easygoing disposition, and I believe that I could put people a little more at ease in the courtroom than Mr. Barlow has been able to do thus far.
What about that, Judge Barlow? We were looking at a poll from the Central Florida Criminal Defense Attorneys, and that was one of the things that caught our attention. And we understand the nature of these polls. There could be people who have an axe to grind. But one of the people who commented on this said that Judge Barlow appears to harbor a deep resentment of all defendants, regardless of their race, but he appears to despise black defendants a little more. Can you comment on this?
Absolutely. First and foremost, you need to consider the source. This is a person who very clearly has an axe to grind. But more importantly, this is a person who is making bald accusations without any substantiation or any facts to back it up. And if this person really feels this way, we have a Judicial Qualifications Commission that investigates such claims. I think that if somebody were to come to my courtroom and sit and watch, they'd see that that's absolutely, unequivocally not true. Also, you should consider the source of the poll. This is the Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, an organization that I will confess at one point I was a member of. But I didn't participate in these polls on a regular basis. First of all, they only seem to have the polls in years that there is an election. They don't seem to do it every year, although they represent that. Additionally, consider the source. If you look at the poll very carefully, you'll see that about 270 some lawyers, I think, that responded were assistant public defenders. In the 5 years I've been an Orange County judge, approximately 10, maybe 12 at most, assistant public defenders has ever appeared in my courtroom. And yet, they deem themselves qualified to render an opinion. This is questionable at best. The simple fact of the matter is that that poll is a popularity contest. And it's not a judge's job to be popular. It's a judge's job to do the job in a manner that demonstrates that he is absolutely fearless about losing his job. If a judge is concerned about what people are going to say in the public, he cannot be effective, or she cannot be effective. The simple fact of the matter is, if you run your courtroom and you make your decisions based upon what's popular, you are ineffective as a judge, you are not giving the citizens justice, and you're not qualified for the position.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. McChesney mentioned temperament to begin with, and I think it would be good to have you follow up. Tell us about your temperament on the bench, and I think it would dovetail your remarks about the poll.
Well, first and foremost, I, like everybody else, am a person. And people have good days, and people have bad days. But I think on a whole, if you were to ask the individuals that are in my courtroom every day, for example, the court clerks, the court deputies, the court reporters that come in and come out and that are watching on the screen 24/7 when you're in court, the prosecutors involved, the attorneys that are actually practicing in front of me on a regular basis, they will tell you on large that I am pleasant, but most important that I am patient. Patience has been defined or spoken to some as caring slowly, and I take the time that is needed to address cases. In regards to pleas and things of that nature and arraignments, I take the time to make sure that the people actually understand what they're doing. I tell them about their driving record and what the effect of what they're going to do is going to have on them down the road. So I cannot agree with a bald statement of someone that says that I have a terrible temperament or disposition, because I think if you actually do your own investigation and make your own decisions, you'll see that's not true. But I certainly wouldn't claim to have not had a bad day here, and again, I think everybody does.
Yeah.
Mr. McChesney, I'm sorry, I'm stepping on the line now.
Oh,
I was going to follow on the same.
sure.
Thing.
And in particular, I think you described yourself as easygoing or laid back and being able to put people at ease.
Yes, absolutely.
So what would your temperament be in greater detail, and what is lacking now?
I think everyone has a right when they enter a courtroom of any kind that they're going to be able to litigate their case, whether they're the attorney or one of the litigants themselves, without fear of the judge. The judge is not there to be feared. The judge is there to do a job, and that job mainly is to act as a referee throughout the course of the trial, and then as a sentencing official. I think there is a sense of fear from some defendants appearing before Mr. Barlow, and I think that fear, based upon what I have read and what I have seen, is justified. Now, I know that this is not a popularity contest, and I understand that judges will not always please everyone. In fact, 50% of the time, they're probably going to upset somebody some of the time when they make their rulings. And it's fair to say that, criminal defendants, if they receive a sentence that they don't feel is fair, might feel that that's unjustified, and that defendant themselves might feel that Mr. Barlow is not doing well as a judge. But remember, that survey you're referring to is not defendants answering that survey. These are members of the bar that appear before Mr. Barlow on a regular basis. These are hundreds of attorneys that go to his courtroom, that witness what Mr. Barlow does on a regular basis, and they're the ones that respond to that survey, and they're the ones that gave him those numbers, and he is responsible for those numbers. And it's really difficult to back away from those numbers and just say, well, it's not a popularity contest. Well, you don't have to be popular as long as you're doing what's right and you're doing so in a way that does not demean individuals. I think your scores will be much higher, and I think I can accomplish that because specifically, I think that if you put people at ease, not just kowtowing towards defense attorneys or prosecutors in a courtroom, but the defendants themselves. I mean, these are people that are presumed innocent until proven guilty. And even once proven guilty by a jury, they still have a right to be treated with respect by the court. And that respect doesn't mean, light sentences. That respect just simply means respect at all times. And I think I could bring that to this courtroom.
Ms. Caraballo, how would you describe your judicial temperament, and how would you weigh in with the statements?
My judicial temperament would be very calm and respectful to all litigants in the courtroom. When there's many people that appear in county court without representation, especially on the civil side, and in actuality, the numbers by the state court administrator for fiscal year 2012-2013, the civil cases were 3 times higher than the criminal filings. And of the 18 judges that we have on county court, only four of them currently are assigned to the civil bench. So the civil aspect of it is also a factor that needs to be considered. And so many of those litigants in county court appear without counsel. So it's critical right off the bat, 50% of them are going to lose their case, just the nature of it if it goes to trial. And so they need to, it's the job of the judge to ensure that if that's their only experience with the judicial system, that they leave knowing that they had a fair proceeding. Even if you're not successful in your case, you need to know that the judge listened to you and that you had a fair proceeding. Our judicial system works because people believe in it, and people believe in it because it works. And that's the role of the judge, to ensure impartiality and equal access to the law. And with respect to the comments in the survey, also the respondents to that survey were prosecutors. It was not all the criminal defense bar. And I do believe that the survey merits consideration. But again, you do have to consider the source, and I agree with the incumbent that it is not a popularity contest, and you can't conduct your courtroom just to get positive survey, but you also have to take that into consideration. It cannot be discounted. When you have the lowest rankings of any judge running for re-election, then the voters really have to stop and think what's going on and take their job in conducting this interview very serious in selecting the next county court judge for Group 10.
Ms. Caraballo, you talked about your certification in construction law, was it?
Yes, sir.
But I didn't hear any commentary about your other facets of law. Do you have any criminal experience?
I do not have any criminal experience at this time. My practice for the past 15 plus years has been solely in the civil side. I am board certified in construction law, and I've been practicing commercial construction litigation for about the last 14 years. I also have experience in bankruptcy and landlord-tenant and general civil litigation. I opened my own firm in January of 2012, and so I've done a variety of cases, different types of cases in circuit and county court, but it has all been on the civil side. However, I have experience in complex litigation in the construction field, there's always a waiver of the right to trial by jury, and the majority of our cases, 99.9% of them, resolve through mediation or other alternative dispute resolution. But I have appellate work, so I understand the importance of preserving the record, the rules of evidence, and I think that my background and experience will lend itself very easily to getting up to speed on the criminal side if I should be assigned to the criminal side of the court when I'm elected.
So you don't see yourself experiencing a steep learning curve if you were appointed to the bench, elected to the bench?
Well, of course there's going to be a learning curve, but there's Judges College, there's CLE available, there's a lot of resources for judges to get up to speed. We have many judges on the bench right now who had no criminal experience or who are assigned to the civil side with no civil experience. That's an equally steep learning curve to go to the other side. So I think that my background experience and my thirst for knowledge, I won't have any problem at all getting up to speed and delving into the cases and becoming familiar with the issues.
Mr. McChesney, have you ever been disciplined by the Florida Bar?
I have not. In fact, I was the chair of a disciplinary grievance committee with the Florida Bar for this total of about 3 years, but I have not ever been disciplined.
Are you aware of any complaints made to the bar?
I believe once as a prosecutor, a criminal defendant sent in a complaint once he was convicted. He didn't like his conviction. He complained about me. The bar summarily dismissed it.
Is Caraballo ever disciplined by the bar?
No, sir.
Are you aware of any complaints?
No.
Mr. Barlow, any dealings with the JQC?
None.
Yeah. Okay.
And as a lawyer, I'm not aware of any complaints or any discipline action. Oh, and that would be in Alabama and in Florida, because I'm licensed in both.
Mr. McChesney, I almost botched that one.
That's okay. McChesney, I think Kenny Chesney with a Mick.
Yeah, I like that. Do you have any experiences outside the courtroom that would qualify you and inform your decision-making on the bench?
Experiences outside the courtroom in terms of
community service, those sorts of things?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Well, I'm a tutor at the Adult Literacy League. I do believe literacy is very important in the criminal justice system and in the court system as a whole. I think the lack of education, the lack of literacy does create many problems in the court system. So for a few years now, I've been a tutor at the Adult Literacy League, trying to at least do a small part in helping to correct that. I also served, again, as the chair of a grievance committee here in the Ninth Circuit, which basically disciplines lawyers for bad behavior, investigates those claims, finds whether there's probable cause or not on those claims. So I do believe in a justice system that is very ethically oriented, that keeps everyone in check, make sure that a few bad apples out there aren't giving us all a very bad name as attorneys and jurists. I've also participated in, I think, teen court for a couple of years. I did teen court, volunteering there, just kind of helping the juveniles through that system. It's a diversionary program for the juvenile justice system. So I do believe in community service. I do believe in giving back to communities, to the community through community service, and I believe in maintaining some form of community service at all times. I do tend to hop around from issue to issue and place to place, but I believe in maintaining community service as a part of just being a member of the community.
Same question, Ms. Caraballo.
Yes, my time in the United States Army, I think, will be invaluable to my leadership and decision making on the bench. During the first Gulf War, I was a squad leader. I was responsible for the health, welfare, and training of my soldiers. During my time in the service, I was Soldier of the Year. I was #1 in my leadership development course, and I was inducted into the Sergeant Audie Murphy Club for Distinguished Non-Commissioned Officers. I also had experience in administrative roles in the Army. I was an instructor at the post-NBC School, Nuclear, Biological, and Chemical Operations. I was also responsible for allocating funds after the first Gulf War to replenish all of the nuclear, biological, and chemical stocks for the 1st Infantry Division. So I have experience in administrative matters and running bureaucracies and how to efficiently and effectively allocate resources. And my practice as an attorney, of course, will help. And running my own firm, as a small business owner, I'm keenly aware of the demands that litigation places on attorneys as well as the litigants. And of course, being married for 27 years, 28 in August, certainly has given me a lot of humility and compassion that I will bring to the bench. And I've raised 2 children, and I think all of those things combined will really inform and dictate how I preside.
Judge, do you want to address the community service question?
Sure, absolutely. In the past, I have served for 2 years on the board of directors for the Variety Club of Orlando, a children's charity. I have participated since 1994 with the Shriners. I'm a Shriner and a Mason, so I participated in those for many years in all of the Shrine charities, the burn hospital, the orthopedic hospital, the speech pathology, those type things. I have both been employed part-time as well as volunteered as an instructor at the police academy at Valencia. I stopped doing that when I took the bench in 2009 because I thought it would be a conflict of interest because the people that I was training would then have to appear in front of me. But I've done that. In terms of other charity work, of course I donate through my church. And did you wish to hear more, anything in terms about experiences and things like that in terms of?
If you think there's pertinent, and
well,
sure.
Like my colleagues, I have run my own law firm. I understand the needs of running a business and the effect that litigation has on the litigants and the attorneys. I have raised 2 stepchildren from minority to majority. I'm currently married and have a 6-year-old stepson that I'm also raising at this point. And as Ms. Caraballo says, that will certainly teach you humility and give you a lot of experience in dealing with people, sometimes in unreasonable circumstances. I think that about covers it.
Okay, thank you.
The former president of the bar, Eugene Pettis, had an initiative during his term to increase diversity on the bench. I wonder what thoughts you have about diversity on the bench. I think his point was that diversity might give a broader element of the community some confidence in the judicial system. So I wonder what you think of that initiative. Any thoughts you have on that? I'll start with you, Ms. Caraballo.
Thank you. I think it's key. I think that it goes back to my comment earlier that our system works because people believe in it, and one aspect of that is when you come into a courtroom, you need to see judges that look like you. If our community is not seeing Hispanic judges, female judges, then they lack a certain confidence in the system. And not necessarily because the judges who are there aren't doing a job, but it's when you need to see people like yourself. You need to be, the community needs to be represented in the courtroom. Just like our political leaders, just like in every aspect of our life, we need the people who are in charge and making the decisions to look like the community. So I think it is important that we have diversity on the bench. And I am, of course, female, but I'm also married to a Puerto Rican, and so I do have that connection with the Hispanic community as well.
Mr. McChesney.
Well, I feel diversity is extremely, imperatively important to the judicial system. We're doing pretty well now, I think, at least in the Orange County Court There's 18 judges, there's 9 women. Right now, there are 9 men on the county court bench presently. There certainly seems to be a lack of, or at least a disparity in terms of minorities on the county court bench. And I think that needs to be rectified. Hard to say how to rectify that, other than I do think that the judicial nominating commissions need to be a little more on par with the general community. I think we need to see more minorities on the judicial nominating commissions, because many of our judges are in fact not elected but come from those commissions. And I think that has a very important impact on that. I also believe that more minority mentoring programs might be helpful to bring in more judges from the minority community. I myself am the past president of the Central Florida Gay and Lesbian Law Association. Diversity is extremely important to me. I sat on that board for 3 years. Something else I can mention is there are no, at least to my knowledge, gay and lesbian members on the JNC. And I think there's also a paucity of gay and lesbian judges on the bench. Now that might be simply because they're not out of the closet, or it might simply be because they just aren't there. But I think that needs to be addressed as well. I think that could be addressed through the JNC again, the Judicial Nominating Commissions, to make sure that the gay and lesbian population is also represented on those commissions.
Judge.
I would have to agree with Mr. McChesney in a lot of what he says, because I made note in terms of the diversity issue that indeed in Orange County, out of 18 county judges, we have 9 women, we have 9 men, we have African Americans represented, we have Asian Pacific Islander represented, we have Hispanic represented, and we have Caucasian white represented. So locally, we do indeed have a fairly diverse group in county court. But to quote an article that I saw in the Florida Bar News, this needs to be more than an issue in regards to diversity racially or gender bias or anything like that, because what we need is talented, qualified, experienced judges. The phraseology that was used in the Bar report was diversity based upon meritocracy. In other words, the most qualified. But we certainly do need to take a more specific look, because I do believe that it's important to have a diverse judiciary, because everyone benefits from that. The active judges on the bench benefit from it, the citizens benefit from it, the lawyers benefit from it. But the bottom line is that we need qualified, experienced judges. And that is, I think, the crucial concern.
Briefly, I'm wondering, and I'll start with you, Judge, if there are any endorsements that you have in this race that you'd like to call our attention to.
Yes, I have been endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, District 7 lodges, and I have been endorsed by the Florida Police Benevolent Association Incorporated, as well as by the Central Florida Police Benevolent Association. I also have endorsements that can be found on my website from some of the area's well-known lawyers, including some past bar presidents such as Warren Lindsay and others of distinction such as he. I know, for example, that I have the endorsement of Andre Young, who is the current president of the Paul Perkins Bar Association. And I think, quite frankly, if he had any concern about me having any active prejudice against members of the community of African American persuasion, he certainly would not have endorsed me, and he would not have done so in such flowing and beneficial terms.
Mr. McChesney.
Yes, well, if you check my website, I've been endorsed by many attorneys who are my peers in the community, who I believe think I would do a fine, upstanding job as judge, which is very important, since those are the lawyers that would be appearing in front of me as a judge. I also have many individual law enforcement officers that know me, my experience. They've also endorsed me. As early as actually a couple of hours ago, I did get an endorsement from the AFL-CIO, and that's those are my endorsements that I've gotten thus far. I still anticipate, since we're still in the heat of this election, that there might be more coming, but that's what I've gained so far, and I'm very proud of that.
I've been endorsed by the West Orange Chamber of Commerce Political Alliance, the Associated Builders and Contractors of Central Florida Political Action Committee, the Orlando and Osceola County Firefighters, the International Allied Painters and Trades Union, and I've also received the endorsement of the President of the Hispanic Bar Association, the President and President-elect of the Central Florida Trial Lawyers Association, as well as former members of that organization presidents. I received endorsement from Warren Chanel, who was the past president of the Paul C. Perkins Bar Association, and past presidents of the Orange County Bar Association, such as Bruce Blackwell. And again, you can check my website for additional endorsements of community members as well as attorneys.